Ambassador Li Huiyun felt the weight of 1,000 alien eyes upon him as he sat in the massive crystal dome that housed the Galactic Council. The chamber stretched high above, its walls made of pure translucent crystal that caught and reflected the light from 3 different suns. Floating platforms held representatives from over 50 alien species. It's more bizarre than the last. The air itself seemed to vibrate with tension as the session entered its 3rd day. Heian had been listening to the same demands over and over again, delivered with increasing arrogance by creatures who believed humanity was nothing more than an upstart species that needed to be put in its place. The Vorthok commander stood nearly 12 feet tall on its platform, its chitinous black armor gleaming under the chamber lights. 6 muscular arms moved in synchronized gestures as it spoke, each ending in clawed hands that could easily crush a human skull. Its voice boomed through the translation devices embedded in every seat. The humans have developed quantum communication, networks that span across 17 star systems, the commander declared, its mandibles clicking with each word, like the sound of breaking bones. This technology belongs to the galactic community, not to one primitive species. They must surrender the patents immediately. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The floating platform of the Quilari delegation swayed slightly as their trade minister rose to speak. The serpentine creature was icily 20 feet long, its scaled body coiled elegantly around a crystalline perch. When it spoke, its forked tongue flickered between razor-sharp teeth. SSSS. The human expansion. Violatus ancient trade agreements, the Quilari hissed, its yellow eyes fixed on Heian. They establish colonias without proper approvals. They undersell our merchant fleets with their efficient production methods. This cannot continue. Park Sujin, Heian's aide, sat perfectly still beside him. Her dark eyes tracked every movement in the chamber, cataloging threats and calculating escape routes with the precision of a trained operative. She had served in the Korean Special Forces before joining the diplomatic corps, and her instincts were screaming warnings about the increasingly hostile atmosphere. The ancient Nexori representative slowly materialized on the central platform, its crystalline form shifting through different colors as it spoke. Elder Morpheus was supposedly over 3,000 years old, one of the oldest beings in the known galaxy. Its voice resonated with harmonic frequencies that made the crystal walls sing. Young humans, it intoned with the weight of millennia. In its voice, your species emerged from its home world merely 2 centuries ago. We have guided the development of civilization for eons before your son was born. You lack the wisdom to govern yourselves, much less expand across the stars. The Elder's form pulsed with deep blue light as it continued. Accept our guidance. Submit to council oversight. Allow us to direct your technological development along proper paths, or face the consequences of your arrogance. Heian had been taking notes on his tablet throughout the proceedings, but now he set it aside. 3 days of this theater was enough. He had listened to species after species lecture humanity about their place in the galactic order. They spoke of humans as if they were children who had stumbled upon dangerous toys. The irony wasn't lost on him. Many of these same species had been locked in bloody wars just 50 years ago, before human mediators had helped negotiate peace treaties. The Vorthok and Quilari had been slaughtering each other over mining rights until human engineers found a way to increase mineral yields that satisfied both sides. Ambassador Heian called the chamber's AI moderator, its voice echoing from speakers embedded throughout the crystal walls. The council awaits humanity's response to these reasonable requests. Heian almost laughed at the absurdity. They were demanding that humanity hand over technologies that had taken decades to develop, accept permanent limitations on their expansion, and submit to oversight by the very species they had helped save from self-destruction. Sujin caught his eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod. She had been monitoring communications from Earth throughout the sessions. The response from the human governments had been unanimous and clear. Hyun rose slowly from his seat, his movement causing a ripple of attention throughout the chamber. The conversations died away as every alien eye focused on the human ambassador. He could feel their expectation, their certainty that humanity would bow to their collective will as so many other species had done before. Honored representatives of the Galactic Council, Heian began, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. The Korean Federation has carefully considered your proposals over these past 3 days. He paused, letting the silence stretch. Sujin gathered their materials with practiced efficiency, her movements suggesting departure rather than negotiation. Appreciate the time and effort you have invested in these discussions, Hyun continued, his tone remaining respectful despite the insults they had endured. However, humanity must respectfully decline your generous offers of guidance and oversight. Chamber erupted. Alien voices rose in anger, confusion, and disbelief. The Vorthok commander's mandibles clicked rapidly in what Sujin recognized as a threat display. The Quillari trade minister's scales bristled with indignation. This is unacceptable, boomed the Vorthok commander. You cannot simply refuse the will of the council. Elder Morpheus's crystalline form flashed bright red, a color that meant anger in Nexari body language. Foolish children, you have no concept of the forces you are defying. Hyun raised his hand, and surprisingly, the chamber began to quiet. Perhaps it was the calm confidence in his gesture, or perhaps the aliens were simply curious to hear what excuse the humans would offer. Effective immediately, Hyun announced, his words carrying the weight of an irreversible decision. Humanity withdraws from all Galactic Council agreements, treaties, and trade arrangements. The silence that followed was deafening. For a moment, even the chamber's environmental systems seemed to hold their breath. Then chaos erupted like a supernova, Captain. Kim Tae-ho was floating in zero gravity above the bridge of his massive cargo hauler when the encrypted message arrived. His ship, the Seoul Express, was just one vessel in a fleet of 200 human freighters, currently docked at Andorian Station 7. The station itself was a marvel of engineering, a spinning wheel of metal and crystal that housed over 50,000 beings from across the galaxy. Kim pulled himself down to his captain's chair and activated the secure channel. Ambassador Hyan's face appeared on the holographic display, looking tired but determined. All human vessels are to implement Protocol 7 immediately, Hyan said without preamble. We're going home. Kim felt his heart skip a beat. Protocol 7 was something they had drilled for but never expected to use. It meant complete withdrawal from all alien space, regardless of contracts, cargo, or consequences. Understood, Sir, Kim replied, already reaching for the ship-wide communications system. Around him, his crew of 32 humans began moving with the precision of a military operation. They had been preparing for this possibility ever since the negotiations began. Within minutes, every human ship in the Andorian sector received the same message. The sight that followed would be talked about in alien bars and recorded in history books for centuries to come. 200 massive cargo vessels, their hulls gleaming silver against the backdrop of space, began powering up their jump drives simultaneously. The station's alien traffic controllers panicked as their screens lit up with departure requests. Vorthok dockworkers watched in confusion as human crews abandoned half-loaded cargo containers. Quillari merchants who had been negotiating shipping contracts found themselves talking to empty offices. Captain Kim stood on his bridge, watching the tactical display as ship after ship vanished into hyperspace. The Seoul Express was loaded with rare minerals bound for the Nexari homeworld, worth more than most planets' annual budgets. With a few keystrokes, he jettisoned the entire cargo hold into space. Sir, that's 50 million credits of refined platinum, his first officer, Lieutenant Park Jin-woo, said nervously. Not our problem anymore, Kim replied, engaging the jump drive. The stars stretched into lines of light as the Seoul Express leaped into hyperspace, leaving behind a cloud of valuable minerals that would drift in space until some lucky salvage crew claimed it. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on hundreds of worlds. Dr. Choi Mina was in the middle of calibrating a quantum computer array when her personal communicator chimed with the withdrawal order. The Centauri Research Station, where she worked, was a joint human-alien facility that had been pushing the boundaries of physics for over a decade. She looked around the laboratory where she had spent the last 5 years of her life. The walls were covered with equations that represented breakthroughs in quantum mechanics. Artificial intelligence, and faster-than-light communications. Most of these discoveries had been made possible by human intuition working alongside alien computational power. Dr. Mina, Keelar scientist, slithered into the lab, its scales showing the purple coloration that indicated extreme distress. Please tell me the rumors are not true. Cannot be leaving. Mina continued packing her personal equipment into a metallic case. I'm afraid they are true, Dr. Veltar. All human personnel are being recalled. But the quantum computers... The alien's voice rose to a near shriek. They operate on algorithms your team developed. Without your oversight, they will become unstable. Within days, Mina paused in her packing to look at the massive quantum processing units that filled the adjacent chamber. Each one was worth more than a small moon and capable of calculations that could predict weather patterns across entire star systems. The Quillari were right. Without human maintenance, these machines would quickly become expensive scrap metal. You have all the technical manuals, Mina said calmly. Your people are brilliant. I'm sure you'll figure it out. But even as she said it, she knew they wouldn't. The quantum computers didn't just run on human algorithms. They required human intuition to handle the unpredictable quantum fluctuations that occurred during complex calculations. It was something that couldn't be programmed or taught, only learned through years of experience. By the time Mina and her team of 47 human researchers boarded their transport ship, the Quillari were already reporting system failures across 3 different research facilities. The situation was even worse on the industrial world of Kepler. For 2B engineer, Yang Dong-wook stood in the control room of Mining Complex Alpha, watching as his alien supervisors argued frantically among themselves. The complex was responsible for extracting rare earth elements that were essential for faster-than-light drives used by ships across the galaxy. The Vorthok Overseer, a massive insectoid creature named Commander Thrak, approached Yang with its mandibles clicking in agitation. Human engineer, you cannot abandon your post. The mining quotas must be maintained. And Yang looked at the creature that had spent the last 3 years treating him like a piece of equipment rather than a person. I'm afraid that's no longer my concern, Commander. He began entering shutdown codes into the master control system. The mining operation relied on a network of automated systems that had been designed and programmed by human engineers over the past 2 decades. The extraction robots, processing plants, and transportation systems were all integrated in ways that only humans fully understood. Stop, Thrak commanded, its 6 arms waving frantically. You do not have authorization to shut down the operation. Actually, Yang said with a slight smile, I do. As chief engineer, I have emergency shutdown authority in case of safety concerns. And I'm very concerned about the safety of continuing operations without proper human oversight. The screens around the control room began flashing red as system after system went offline. The massive mining robots that had been chewing through asteroid fields for years slowly ground to a halt. Processing plants that had been refining raw materials into finished products shut down their fusion reactors. Within hours, the mining output from Kepler-44 to be dropped to 0. The Vorthok technicians tried desperately to restart the systems, but the human-designed equipment refused to cooperate. Every attempt to bypass the shutdown protocols triggered additional safety lockouts. The economic shockwaves began almost immediately. Financial markets that had operated smoothly for decades suddenly found themselves without the predictive algorithms that human mathematicians had developed. Trade routes that depended on human-managed logistics networks descended into chaos. As cargo ships found themselves without proper coordination, on the Nexari homeworld, the ancient crystal cities began experiencing rolling blackouts. The fusion reactors that powered their civilization had been maintained by human engineers for over 30 years. The Nexari had grown so dependent on human expertise that they had stopped training their own people in power generation. Elder Morpheus himself stood in his crystal palace, watching as sections of the city went dark for the first time in millennia. The irony was bitter. The species that claimed to be the wisest in the galaxy had become completely dependent on the primitive humans they had just dismissed. Commander Yoon Ji-hai sat in the secret monitoring station hidden in the asteroid belt of the Tau Ceti system, watching it all unfold on her screens. For years, humanity had been quietly establishing surveillance networks in strategic positions throughout the galaxy. What the aliens had thought were simple trading posts and research stations had actually been carefully planned. Observation points. She smiled grimly as she watched alien fleets scrambling to cover defensive positions that humans had been monitoring for decades. Without human intelligence networks, the various alien species were effectively blind to each other's movements. The withdrawal was complete. The galaxy would never be the same. The magnificent crystal chambers of the Galactic Council had lost their shine. Where once the walls had pulsed with vibrant energy from countless alien civilizations,
now they flickered with unstable power fluctuations.
The grand dome that had housed the galaxy's most powerful beings for over 1,000 years was falling apart. And everyone knew why. Elder Morpheus stood on his platform, but his crystalline form was no longer the brilliant beacon of ancient wisdom it had once been. The translucent body that had glowed with inner light now appeared dull and cracked, like old glass ready to shatter. The life support systems that had kept the 3,000-year-old being alive were failing, and the human biotechnology that maintained them was gone. This is intolerable. The Elder's voice cracked like breaking crystal as he spoke. We are the oldest civilization in the galaxy. We guided species to enlightenment before these humans even discovered fire. But his words carried none of their former authority. Every alien in the chamber could see the Elder's weakness, could smell the fear that permeated the once proud council. The Quillari Trade Minister slithered onto the central platform, his scales showing the bright red coloration of extreme panic. 3 weeks had passed since the human withdrawal, and the serpentine being's trading empire was crumbling faster than a house of cards in a hurricane. We must send diplomatic missions to Earth immediately, he hissed, his forked tongue flicking nervously. Offer them anything they want. Territory, resources, even council membership with full voting rights? Captain Anjay Wook stood calmly in the human embassy section, one of the few humans remaining in council space. His uniform was pristine, his posture military straight, and his expression professionally neutral. He had volunteered to stay behind specifically to handle situations like this. I'm afraid that won't be possible, An said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's failing audio systems. Earth no longer has the authority to speak for all human territories. The aliens stared at him in confusion. Concepts seemed impossible to their hierarchical minds. What do you mean? Demanded the Vorthok commander, though his voice lacked its usual threatening tone. His 6 arms moved restlessly, betraying his anxiety. An activated a holographic display showing the human territories. 3 days ago, the Mars Republic declared complete independence from Earth. The Europa Federation followed suit 6 hours later. The Titan Alliance, the Asteroid Belt Confederacy, and the Alpha Centauri Colony Network have all established autonomous governments. The display showed dozens of human settlements, each now flying different flags and operating under different political systems. The unified humanity that the Council had tried to intimidate no longer existed. You'll need to negotiate with each faction separately and continued with the same professional courtesy, and they'll only deal with you as equals, not as subjects. The word equals hit the council chamber like a physical blow. For millennia, these species had dominated smaller civilizations through superior technology and coordinated pressure. The idea of treating anyone as an equal was foreign to their thinking. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the true extent of humanity's integration into alien society was becoming terrifyingly clear. On the Vorthok military world of Keth Prime, General D. Kong Sora had quietly evacuated all human technical advisors just hours before the withdrawal order. The Vorthok had prided themselves on having the most advanced military in the galaxy. Their plasma cannons could melt through any known armor. Their shield generators could withstand direct hits from asteroid impacts, and their targeting systems could track and destroy enemy ships across vast distances. But as General Thark discovered when he tried to run combat simulations, none of it worked properly without human expertise. What is happening to our weapons? Thark demanded as his technicians frantically worked at control panels. The massive plasma cannon that had once been capable of destroying a moon was now firing at barely 50% power. The targeting computers are malfunctioning, sir, reported a junior officer. They keep calculating firing solutions for outdated ship designs. It's like they've forgotten everything about modern warfare. What the Vorthok didn't realize was that human advisors had been subtly upgrading their systems for decades, always staying one step ahead of potential threats. Without those upgrades, the Vorthok military had effectively been sent back 20 years in technological development. Ambassador Seo Haijin sat in her office aboard the diplomatic vessel New Seoul, watching as her communication system lit up with incoming messages. Every few minutes, another alien government was sending desperate pleas for negotiation. The proud Aquarian Empire, which had never acknowledged human existence, was now offering to pay premium rates for human-manufactured water purification systems. Their ocean worlds were experiencing massive pollution problems that only human bioengineering could solve. The insectoid Zephyrian hive, known for their xenophobic policies, was begging for human agricultural experts. Their food production had collapsed when automated farming systems shut down, and billions of their people were facing starvation. Each message was more desperate than the last. Species that had demanded humanity's submission were now offering tribute, territory, and technology in exchange for basic trade agreements. But the most shocking revelation came when a Nexari delegation actually arrived at the Sol system, hoping to negotiate directly with Earth's government. The three crystalline beings approached in their ancient starship, confident that their superior technology would intimidate the humans into quick negotiations. What they found instead made them question everything they thought they knew about humanity. Dr. Lim Wuzhen stood on the bridge of the solar defense platform, watching as the Nexari ship triggered proximity alarms throughout the system. Hidden weapons platforms that had been disguised as mining stations suddenly came online, their targeting systems locking on to the alien vessel. Nexari vessel, this is Solar Defense Command. Lim broadcasted on all frequencies. You're entering restricted space without authorization. The lead Nexari diplomat, Elder Kethmorin, appeared on the communication screen, looking confused and slightly panicked. We were not aware of any defense installations in this system. Our sensors show only primitive industrial platforms. Lim smiled politely.
Out.
Our defensive capabilities have been upgraded recently. If you wish to enter the Sol system for diplomatic purposes, you'll need to submit a formal request through proper channels and acknowledge the sovereignty of all human governments. The word sovereignty hit the Nexari like a physical slap. It had never acknowledged any species as sovereign equals in their 3,000 years of existence. As Elder Kethmorin looked at the tactical display showing dozens of weapon platforms that had appeared from nowhere, he began to understand a terrifying truth. Humanity hadn't just walked away from the Council. They had been preparing for this moment for decades. The galaxy's power structure hadn't just shifted. It had been completely overturned, and the species that had ruled for millennia were now begging for scraps from the table. They had tried to deny humanity a seat at the first crack in the Galactic Council's unity. Appeared 6 weeks after humanity's withdrawal, and it came in the form of plasma fire, lighting up the darkness of space. Colonel Park Hyansu floated in the command center of his cloaked observation station, watching the most spectacular space battle he had ever witnessed unfold before his eyes. The station itself was a marvel of human stealth technology, invisible to alien scanners and positioned perfectly to monitor the Kepler 186 system. "Colonel, we're getting massive energy readings," reported Sergeant Kim Da-yoon from her sensor. "Station, both fleets are going all out." On the tactical display, two massive armadas faced each other across the asteroid field that surrounded Kepler 186's fourth planet. The Vorthok battle fleet consisted of 47 warships. They're black, hulls bristling with plasma cannons and missile pods. Each ship was over a kilometer long and capable of reducing a planet's surface to molten slag. Facing them were 63 vessels of the Quilari Trade Consortium, sleek silver ships that moved through space like deadly serpents. Their energy weapons created brilliant streams of coherent light that could slice through armor like a hot knife through butter. The battle had been raging for 3 days, and neither side was winning. "This is incredible," muttered Lieutenant Oh Sung-min as he recorded the engagement. "Look at their formation patterns. They're using outdated tactics from 50 years ago." Park nodded grimly. Both species had grown dependent on human strategic advisors over the decades. The complex battle algorithms that had made their fleets so effective were products of human military minds working alongside alien technology. Without that guidance, they were fighting like amateurs, with professional weapons. A massive Vorthok dreadnought, the pride of Kethfer, launched a salvo of quantum torpedoes at a cluster of Quillari destroyers. The serpentine ships scattered in all directions, but their evasive maneuvers were predictable and clumsy. Two ships vanished in brilliant explosions that could be seen from 3 star systems away. The Quillar retaliated by focusing their combined firepower on a single Vorthok cruiser. The concentrated energy beams overwhelmed the ship's shields and carved through its armor like paper. But instead of following up their advantage, the Quillari fleet hesitated, unsure of their next move without human tactical guidance. Sir Dayun reported we're receiving communications from both fleets. We're demanding human mediation to end the conflict. Park almost laughed at the irony. These same species had declared humanity too primitive to have a voice in galactic affairs, and now they were begging for human help to stop themselves from mutual annihilation. No response, Park ordered. We're observers only. Let them figure it out themselves. The fighting had started over mining rights to the rare elements found in Kepler 186's asteroid belt. For 50 years, human mediators had helped negotiate peaceful resource-sharing agreements between competing alien factions. Without those negotiations, old territorial disputes were exploding into violence across the galaxy. Meanwhile, in the elegant conference room of Europa Station, a scene was unfolding that would have been impossible just months earlier. Ambassador Linari sat calmly at her desk, reviewing diplomatic documents, while 3 of the most ancient and powerful beings in the galaxy knelt on the floor before her. The Nexari delegation consisted of Elder Morpheus himself, along with 2 other crystalline beings whose combined age exceeded 10,000 years. Their translucent forms flickered weakly, the internal light that had once blazed with authority now dim and fading. Ambassador Nari, Elder Morpheus spoke, his voice barely a whisper compared to the booming pronouncements he had once made in the council chambers. We require your assistance. Nari looked up from her documents with professional courtesy, though inwardly she marveled at the sight. The most arrogant species in the galaxy, beings who had claimed to be the shepherds of civilization itself, were literally on their knees begging for help. Of course, Elder Morpheus. The Europa Federation is always willing to discuss mutually beneficial arrangements with our neighbors. The key word was mutually. Nari had made it clear from the beginning that any agreement would be between equals, not between master and servant. Our life support systems are failing, admitted Elder Velther, the youngest of the Nexari, at barely 800 years old. Without human biotechnology, our people are dying. Entire crystal cities have gone dark for the first time in millennia. Nari nodded sympathetically. I understand your situation is serious. The Europa Federation would be happy to provide the necessary biotechnology and engineering support. Hope flickered in the Nexari's crystalline forms. However, Nari continued, any such agreement would require full diplomatic recognition of human sovereignty, complete technology sharing between our peoples, and a formal end to all claims of Nexari superiority over other species. The silence that followed was deafening. For 3,000 years, the Nexari had never acknowledged any species as their equal. Their entire identity was built on the belief that they were the galaxy's natural rulers. Elder Morpheus's form flickered as he struggled with the decision. We accept your terms. The words came out like a physical confession, and Nari could see the pain they caused. But she also knew that without this agreement, the Nexari civilization would collapse within months. Across the solar system, Admiral Kim Jun-ho was coordinating a very different kind of operation from the bridge of his flagship, the Incheon. The massive vessel, originally designed as a heavy cruiser, had been converted into a humanitarian aid ship capable of supporting entire planets in crisis. Admiral, we're receiving distress calls from the Andromedian colonies, reported his communications. Officer, their supply lines have been cut by the fighting between the Vorthok and Quillari. The Andromedians were a peaceful species of blue-skinned humanoids who had never developed faster than light travel on their own. They depended entirely on alien trade networks for advanced technology and medical supplies. Prepare Relief Fleet Alpha, Junho ordered. Full humanitarian mission. Within hours, a fleet of human vessels loaded with food, medicine, and emergency supplies was jumping toward Andromedian space. Sight of human ships arriving to help, when the rest of the galaxy was tearing itself apart, had a profound impact. On the smaller species caught in the chaos, similar scenes were playing out across dozens of star systems. The Crystalline Collective, a group of silicon-based life forms, found their mining operations under attack by desperate Quillari raiders. Human peacekeeping forces arrived within days, driving off the attackers and establishing protective patrols. The gentle folk of Tau Ceti, whose entire civilization was based on philosophy and art, watched in terror as refugee fleets from the Galactic Wars approached their peaceful worlds. Human diplomatic vessels intervened, negotiating safe passage and establishing refugee camps on uninhabited worlds. Each act of compassion and protection earned humanity new allies and demonstrated something the old council had never understood. True power came not from domination, but from being essential to others' well-being. The final blow to the old order came when Professor O. Minsu published his economic analysis from Seoul National University's new off-world campus. The report, distributed freely across human space, revealed the shocking truth about galactic commerce. The Galactic Standard Credit was never backed by council resources. O explained in a broadcast that reached every inhabited system. For the past 60 years, it has been supported entirely by human financial institutions, human trade guarantees, and human economic activity. The revelation sent shockwaves through alien governments. The currency they had used to buy and sell, everything from starships to entire planets, was worthless paper backed by the very species they had tried to subordinate. Within days, the Galactic Standard Credit collapsed completely. Entire sectors found themselves unable to conduct basic trade as their money became worthless overnight. Desperate alien governments began issuing their own currencies. But without the complex financial networks that humans had built, interstellar commerce ground to a halt. The mighty Galactic Council, which had ruled over thousands of worlds for millennia, was dead. In its place, a new order was emerging, one where humanity stood not as conquerors, but as the indispensable center around which the galaxy would have to rebuild itself. The morning sun streamed through the massive windows of New Geneva Station. As Ambassador Zheng Suhayan prepared for another day that would have been unthinkable just 2 years ago, the station itself floated in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, a gleaming symbol of humanity's new position in the galaxy. Where once humans had traveled to alien worlds as supplicants, now the aliens came to them. The diplomatic quarter buzzed with activity as representatives from dozens of alien species waited patiently in line, hoping for audiences with human officials. The contrast with the old Galactic Council couldn't have been more striking. Instead of grand crystal chambers designed to intimidate, the human facilities were modest, functional, welcoming. Suhayan looked out her office window at the sight that never failed to amaze her. Ships from across the galaxy filled the station's docking bays, sleek Quillari vessels. Massive Vorthok warships, elegant Nixari crystal cruisers, and dozens of smaller craft from species that had once been too afraid to speak in council sessions. A soft chime announced her first appointment of the day. The door slid open to reveal Commander Thrak, the same Vorthok officer who had once dismissed human capabilities with arrogant clicks of his mandibles. Now those same mandibles trembled with nervous energy as he approached her desk. Ambassador Suhayan Thrak began, his 6 arms moving in what humans had learned was a gesture of deep respect among his people. The Vorthok Defense Coalition wishes to formalize our security agreement? Hyan gestured to the chair across from her desk, a specially reinforced seat. designed to accommodate the commander's massive frame. 2 years ago, this same being had sneered at human primitive technology while standing in the council chambers. Of course, Commander. The Mars Republic has reviewed your request for military assistance against the pirate raids in the Kepler sector. She activated a holographic display, showing star charts marked with recent attack patterns. Our analysis shows the raiders are using hit-and-run tactics that suggest former Council military training. Thrak's compound eyes studied the display carefully. Yes, many of our former allies have turned to piracy since the economic collapse. They blame us for the Council's failure, not understanding that we were all equally dependent on human... expertise. The word came out with difficulty, as if admitting human expertise still caused him physical pain. The Mars Republic can deploy 3 battle groups to establish patrol routes through your territory, Suhain continued. In exchange, we would like access to your biomechanical research programs as full partners, with shared benefits and equal decision-making authority. Without hesitation, Thrak pressed his primary hand against the treaty pad, sealing the agreement with his biological signature. The proud warrior who had once demanded human submission was now grateful for human protection. Thank you, Ambassador. The Vorthok people will not forget this kindness. As Thrak left, Suhain reflected on how much had changed. The Vorthok military, once the most feared force in the galaxy, had been reduced to barely half strength by defections, equipment failures, and an inability to recruit new warriors without human training programs. Meanwhile, in the engineering section of the station, a scene was unfolding that would have shocked the old council leadership. Engineer Bei Chanwu knelt beside a massive fusion reactor.
Actor!
Working shoulder-to-shoulder with Elder Velthar, one of the most ancient Nexar engineers. The harmonic frequency needs to be adjusted by 0.03%, Bei explained patiently. Showing the crystalline being how to fine-tune the reactor's output. Your people's energy systems are incredibly elegant, but they need constant monitoring to maintain efficiency. Velthor's crystalline form pulsed with grateful blue light. Your teaching methods are illuminating, Engineer Bei. For 3,000 years, we believed our technology was perfect. We never considered that perfection might require continuous improvement. The transformation of the Nexari had been perhaps the most dramatic of all. The species that had claimed to be the galaxy's wisest had discovered that their ancient wisdom was actually ancient stagnation. Their technology hadn't evolved in millennia, while human innovation had been advancing at exponential rates. Knowledge belongs to everyone, Bei replied, adjusting a control crystal with practiced ease. That's the first principle of human engineering. We learn from each other. Around them, dozens of Nexari technicians watched carefully, taking notes on techniques. That would keep their civilization alive for another 1,000 years. The proud beings who had once claimed superiority over all younger species were now eager students, grateful for every lesson. On the outer rim of human space, Captain Shineira stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Busan, watching as her mixed fleet prepared for another patrol mission. Her tactical display showed 47 vessels from 17 different species, all operating under human command protocols. Captain, reported her first officer, Lieutenant Commander Zarthik, a former Quillari naval officer who had joined the human fleet after his own navy collapsed. Long-range sensors are detecting suspicious activity in the Vega system. Possible pirate staging area. Nodded, studying the tactical information. Her crew was like nothing the galaxy had ever seen before. Humans working alongside former enemies, all united by shared purpose and mutual respect. Signal the fleet. We'll investigate in force. Remember, our mission is protection, not conquest. Any pirates we encounter get one chance to surrender. The fleet moved through hyperspace. Like a school of mechanical fish, their formation perfect, despite the variety of ship designs and alien crew members. Human tactical doctrine had proven so effective that even proud species, like the Quillari, had abandoned their traditional strategies in favor of human methods. In the medical bay of Dr. Ruteyung's research station orbiting Europa, a miracle was taking place. The doctor watched as a young Andromedian child took her first steps after receiving experimental gene therapy. that had been developed through human-alien collaboration. The treatment is working perfectly, Rue reported to the child's parents, whose blue skin shimmered with joy. The genetic defect that would have left her paralyzed has been completely corrected. The Andromedian father, tears streaming down his face, bowed deeply to the human doctor. The old council told us such diseases were incurable. They said we should accept the will of fate. Rue smiled gently. Human medicine doesn't believe in incurable diseases, only diseases we haven't learned to cure yet. And now that we're working together, we're learning faster than ever. The research station had become a beacon of hope for species across the galaxy. Genetic diseases that had plagued entire civilizations for thousands of years were being conquered. Through the combination of human innovation and alien biological knowledge, as the evening approached on New Geneva Station, Admiral Hong Seok-jin stood in his command center, reviewing reports from across human-controlled space. The holographic displays showed a galaxy transformed beyond recognition. Trade routes that had been chaotic battlegrounds 2 years ago now operated under human protection. Diplomatic disputes that would have sparked wars were being resolved through human mediation. Technological breakthroughs were occurring daily through human-led research. Partnerships. Admiral his aide, Commander Park Soo-jin, approached with the daily intelligence briefing. The remnant council factions are still fighting each other in the core systems. But their conflicts are staying localized. No signs of them trying to reform the old power structure. Hong nodded. The various alien factions that had once dominated galactic politics were too busy fighting over the scraps of their former empire to threaten anyone else. Meanwhile, species that had been oppressed under the old system were flourishing under human protection. What about the economic indicators? Trade volume through human space is up 400% from pre-withdrawal levels, Soo-jin reported. The new currency system backed by human industrial output is stable across all sectors. Even former council worlds are requesting conversion to human financial standards. Hong smiled at the irony. The aliens had tried to force humanity into submission through economic pressure, not realizing that human economics had been supporting their entire civilization. When humans withdrew that support, the galaxy's economy had collapsed like a house of cards. But rather than leaving the aliens to suffer, humanity had offered a better alternative. Human-backed currency was stable because it was based on actual production rather than political promises. Human trade agreements were fair because they treated all parties as equals. Human financial institutions were trustworthy because they operated on principles of mutual benefit rather than exploitation. Sir Soo-jin continued. We're also receiving reports that several former council species are requesting membership in the Human Colonial Alliance. They want full integration, including adoption of human governmental systems. The irony was breathtaking. Species that had demanded humanity accept alien guidance were now begging to adopt human political structures. They had seen how human democracy, human economics, and human diplomacy had created prosperity and stability, while their own systems had led to chaos and collapse. Hong walked to the observation deck. Looking out at the stars that had once seemed so hostile to humanity, now those same stars were filled with human ships, human stations, and alien allies who looked to humanity for leadership and protection. The transformation was complete. But it hadn't come through conquest or domination. Humanity had simply demonstrated a better way of doing things, then walked away when disrespected. When the old system collapsed under its own contradictions, humanity had been there to offer something better. The Galactic Council had tried to rule through fear and intimidation. Humanity ruled through competence and compassion. The aliens had demanded submission. Humanity offered partnership. The Council had hoarded knowledge and power. Humanity shared both freely. As Hong watched another group of alien diplomats arriving at the station, he realized that humanity had won the greatest victory possible. They had made themselves not just powerful, but beloved. They weren't conquerors, ruling over resentful subjects. They were protectors, guiding grateful allies. The galaxy looked to Earth and her colonies, not because it had to, but because it wanted to. And that, Hong realized, was true power. The end.